Thank you so much for attending my keynote on Disruptive LegalTech. I'm presenting today from Hamburg, Germany, and I'm very happy to be here. Before I start about talking about Disruptive LegalTech, I will give a brief introduction about myself, about how I came to talk about such a topic, and then we will dive right in. So just to myself, my educational background, I have a background in business studies, especially in disruptive strategy and corporate innovation, which is why I could combine my knowledge of business skills with the legal world. And as a result, I was also named Woman of Legal Tech in 2018. And this year I'm nominated to become European Woman of Legal Tech in the category of entrepreneurship. But how come that I entered the world of legal tech at all? Well, I took over our family business, LECARE, 4 years ago, and we have been developing software for legal professionals since more than 30 years. We're based in Hamburg, Germany, German company. And what do we do? Well, we developed law firm solutions in the 80s, which was very, very pioneering at that time. I will come to that later. We then sold this company called Fantasy to a German player for other tax solutions and softwares, and then started focusing on developing legal software for corporate legal departments. So no longer law firm software, but corporate legal department software, and have been developing cloud-based solution in this field ever since. We're mostly operating in the German, Austrian, and Switzerland market, but also across other countries in Europe and internationally, such as Mexico. Well, here you see an excerpt of some of our customers, just to get an idea of what kind of corporate legal departments we cater to. It's a broad range of corporate departments, broad range of industries and company sizes. No size fits all, so our extreme focus is on customizing the solutions to our users' needs. And what do we do exactly? Well, at the core, we help corporate legal departments digitalize their legal departments and digitalize their work. So especially getting away from paper and trying to make it all digitally accessible, searchable, so you can collaborate with your colleagues in digital matter files, but also for contract management as such. Here you have a small overview just to see how much different solutions you can develop over the course of 20 and 30 years. We've also brought it into the compliance and the data protection area to complete our portfolio of solutions for our customers in the enterprise space. However, today, we really want to talk about what disruptive legal tech is. And as such, I have a little agenda. So first of all, I want to start off with talking about the digital transformation and legal technology adoption, specifically in Germany, as it's a very particular market and very interesting to see what types of mechanisms operate in this market. Afterwards, I will give an overview of what disruptive innovations and strategies are. And thirdly, we will try to apply this to the legal tech space in Germany. So, looking at the legal ecosystem is relevant to understand where legal technology and the digital transformation of the industry can actually start or have an impact. And as you can see, it's very broad. Usually we only talk about law firms or corporate legal departments, but actually it goes way further than that. The government, the justice system, technology providers are involved, universities are involved, there are legal software companies like ours, but there are also new and modern young startups who are trying to disrupt the market as well. And we have many different players in the market. We have lawyers, we have business people, we have tech people, but also designers, and all of them play a role in shaping the digital legal ecosystem, even in Germany. To start with, I think it's important to give you an understanding of how the German legal industry actually operates, because it's quite different from other legal industries in Europe or across the world. So first of all, it's based on a very traditional business model, like in other countries, but here especially. We have an information asymmetry between the lawyers and the clients. We have a huge opacity in the value creation process, so no client really understands how the lawyers come up with their solutions, and I can understand that very well since I'm not a lawyer. And we have the typical hourly billing model. So far, this is not very different than other countries. However, in Germany, we have two factors that contribute to being special, and that is the regulation of two things. the regulation with respect to the ownership of law firms and with the practice of law. That means owning a law firm is restricted only to lawyers as well as the practice of law, which makes it very hard to disrupt the legal industry in Germany, as regulation prevents other non-lawyers to operate in these spaces. And that is one of the significant attributes of why the legal industry in Germany has not been disrupted in the last decades, at least not very much. And we will see how this has progressed overall coming now. So one thing to bear in mind, though, which is very important and which makes the German legal industry also much more special than others, is that German legal professionals are strongly concerned about data security and data protection, and generally are very risk averse. So this has implications in many areas. For example, the use of cloud-based solutions, which many German legal professionals are rather skeptic of, if not even scared. So the use of on-premise solution is still very dominant in the German market, which in other countries is not imaginable. So this is just one example of how Germany is different again. However, let's look at the legal technology adoption in Germany across the last decades, at least as how our company has been able to observe. So in the 80s, where also our company was founded, there were very few digital solutions for legal professionals, and they were programmed in MS-DOS, such as, for example, practice management solutions like Pharo, which our company also built, but there were also many expert systems, very basic in the 80s. You can imagine the overall level of legal technology adoption back then was really, really low. In the 90s, however, there came a bit of more movement. There were first Windows-based practice management solutions like our solution Fantasy, but also more sophisticated expert systems. And towards the ends of the 90s, there was a huge crowding of the legal software market. So a lot of different providers emerged and tried to do similar solutions and tried to offer solutions to the legal professionals. However, in the beginning of the 90s, you could clearly see a market concentration. So especially after the dot-com boom, I think there was a rough consolidation of the market, and the dominant legal software providers definitely emerged as a result. Some of them among us were early on in developing cloud-based and browser-based solutions for the legal space, which was very, very new at that time. And hardly anyone thought that that would actually, prove to be worthwhile. As we can see nowadays, it turned out to be a good idea. And in the 2000s also, you could see a big uptake in the use of Microsoft Office, the tool suite. But let's be fair, it was mainly the use of Word and Outlook, which is still very dominant until this day. And you could also see in the 2000s the drivers of the digital transformation in the German legal industry unfolding. So overall, you could say the legal technology adoption in the German market was slowly awakening. So it was there, but there were only rather a few professionals who was confronting these topics and who were interested in using software in the legal space. Let's talk about these drivers of the digital transformation, because they are very important when looking at today's situation and looking towards the future. So what actually drove the digital transformation, especially in the German legal industry? Well, you have these established legal software players which have been around since quite a while. They were there, and the adoption of them has increased over time. However, there have been other topics, such as the more for less challenge, which is very dominant in legal departments. So in a company, in the corporate legal department, the C-level usually expects the legal department to write more legal services, because the complexity of the world and of business has increased dramatically over the last years. But at the same time, they expect the costs to be lowered. And as this is obviously a dilemma, there have been different strategies to approach this problem. One is the efficiency strategy of Richard Susskind, and it comprises the decomposition of legal services into separate activities that then can be sourced in the most efficient way to reduce costs. And as a result, the use of legal tech has been increasing in order to do that more efficiently and also to reduce cost. And this again has had a big impact on the law firms who have been catering to corporate legal departments and who have slowly are pressured to adjust their services and the way they offer services to corporate legal departments. So this is one of the drivers. A second driver is the so-called liberalization of the German legal industry. And as we mentioned before, regulation is a big part and a big stopper and barrier to disruption or digital transformation. But slowly there have been a few initiatives and also legal changes that the practice of law could become more open, and more competition could be promoted, which at the end, in turn, could lead to reduced prices and which could spur innovation. Overall, this is not just great for the corporate legal departments, obviously, but especially important when you look at access to justice. So the end consumer can get better and more affordable access to legal services, either through legal technology solutions or just because the market has become more open. Third of all, obviously, the most obvious driver is the digitization in general. We have digital transformations going on across the whole world in all kinds of industry sectors and businesses. And as such, the digitization of legal work, of the work of legal professionals, has been a huge driver in transforming this industry digitally. So as a result, also legal tech solutions have been implemented and have been adopted to digitalize legal departments, law firms, and other areas within the legal industry and the ecosystem. And some of them have been disruptive innovations and startups, not all of them, but some of them, which we will figure out later on. So these are the three drivers. As a result, what happened? So as these drivers truly kicked in the 2010s, which has just been the past decade, we could see a significant increase in the adoption of established legal software solutions in law firms, but also legal departments. And we saw that the business-wide digital transformation trend clearly had an effect here. But also it provided an opportunity for a lot of different legal tech startups to create businesses in different kinds of sectors within the industry. So whether it's B2C, an access to justice topic, for example, where you focus and target the end consumer and try to provide better and affordable services for him, or it's a B2B business, which many startups focus on, which caters to law firms or legal departments. A lot has been going on, and it's very exciting to see how these legal startups actually accelerate or have been accelerating the digital transformation in the German legal industry. And just not accelerating by being established, but by keeping the conversation going and making it even more widely aware that legal technology can actually have an important role to play in this digital transformation. In addition to that, we have several concepts that have been emerged over the last decade, such as legal design and legal operations, which are two different concepts, which also can go hand in hand. And it's the concept of trying to be more human-centered and customer-centric in the development and the providing of legal services for whatever type of customers, and the concept of legal operations, which is focusing on trying to provide legal services in a more business way. So focusing on the operation side of legal services and trying to increase efficiencies and making them more effective. And these two concepts have slowly been increasing in the adoption, and either combined or individually with legal technology as well. So you can see all these different areas converging, and you can see legal professionals really reaping the benefits of these concepts and transforming their practices in remarkable ways. Coming towards the 2020s, where we have arrived now, well, it's been going on crazy this year, obviously, as the COVID crisis has emerged, and this is the reason for why we have this wonderful conference in a virtual way. We, as a legal software provider, could definitely see a significant acceleration of the digital transformation and the adoption of legal technologies this year, and we expect it to continue very strongly like that in the coming decade. We believe that the COVID-19 crisis has been a significant accelerator of these factors, and we can already see this in the uptake in demand for legal solutions in any type of area there where legal professionals would need such a solution. And also, as a result, we are very confident and very excited to see what kind of legal disruptive technologies will emerge in times of disruption, as you say. And we're very excited to see that. So overall, we can see that not just the legal technology adoption has been accelerating, but overall the trend of disruption is coming. And yeah, we're very excited to see and also to shape this process along the way. So here you can see an overview of different legal tech startups that have been emerging over the last years. And it's just crazy because once you create these overviews of the legal tech startups, especially in Germany, 2 or 3 weeks later, they're already outdated. So it's very interesting to see how many legal tech startups have been created recently, not just in Germany, but internationally, and which areas are actually crystallizing. To give you an overview of where exactly these legal technologies have been emerging and where the potential for disruptive legal technologies lies, I created an overview to show you the different categories of legal technology solutions. And for sure, you have a huge area in the enterprise legal management area, which is catered to the corporates and the law firms. It's all about document management, about claims management, and calendaring and client management, but an equally big area is actually the contracting area, where many legal startups have been emerging, whether it's about contract generation, contract negotiation, contract analytics. So it's a huge space. Obviously, the topic of smart contracts in combination with blockchain is very significant. But it goes on and on, as you can see in this chart. The other area is legal operations management, which I just mentioned before. Many different solutions have been evolving in this space as well to assist legal operations managers in their new work. But at the same time, as we mentioned, there are also legal marketplaces, either for the B2C or the B2B space, and many other legal online services and analytics platforms and solutions have been created. So as you can see, it's become quite a complex world in the legal tech space. Us as an established provider, we're very excited to see that, to see the industry develop, and also to see with which kind of companies we can collaborate to actually offer our clients an even better and more seamless user experience. So for us, we're very excited about these wonderful developments and the growth in this market. But yeah, overall, you can say, well, okay, in the 80s and 90s, the people who adopted legal technologies, they were quite the pioneers. We would call them innovators and early adopters from a business point of view. And the early majority actually developed over the last 2 decades. So there's been a big uptake in the use of technology. However, I would say we're still not really there yet. I think the potential of legal technologies, whatever type, is still very big, which is why, in our opinion, we're only now at the stage of the late majority, where even those who've been very skeptical about legal technology are now slowly, warming up to the idea of using technologies in the legal space. As I mentioned, especially German legal professionals are rather skeptic about technologies, especially cloud-based solutions. So we're very excited to see how even those have now realized that there is a potential need for legal technologies in their day-to-day work, as nowadays, if you work at home, it's kind of impossible to take the entire basement of legal paper files with you. So the argument for digitalizing them, is becoming more and more pressing. But yes, let's think about where does disruptive innovation and strategy come into this? Because what we've seen so far, it's quite clear and it makes sense, but is it really disruptive? Not sure. And the disruptive innovations in the legal tech space, I think we can only properly understand if we understand the theory and the concepts behind disruption itself. So, as Clayton Christensen, a former professor, a late professor, unfortunately, from Harvard Business School, claims a disruptive innovation is an innovation that, on the one hand, either creates a new market and a new value network, so something that has not been existing before, or it does disrupt an existing market or value network, and thereby it displaces established market-leading firms and creates new things, so either from an existing one or in a new way. And this is very interesting, especially for us as an established player. So we've been very intensely looking towards this space. But yeah, what more can you say about disruption? Well, there are different kinds of disruptive strategies you can employ for sure. So on the one hand, you can employ sustaining innovations, which basically means you have an existing product or an existing service or solution, and you improve it through innovation, but just in an incremental way. And usually the person who wins in a market is someone who has been established, who is a so-called incumbent player, because they already have a great potential there and they should improve it and can improve it quite quickly given their experience. There is, however, another type of disruption, or let's say innovation, which is the low-end disruption. And this is creating something that has been there before, but offering it to the low-end segment of the market and making it more affordable to this segment. And usually the company types that win this are the new entrants into the market. So not necessarily the big incumbents that have been there for a long time, but the nimble and small, agile speedboats that identify truly where the need of the customers lie in. And thirdly, we have a third type of disruption, which is new market disruption, which I mentioned before, is where entirely new markets are created, which also is very hard for an incumbent player to fight, because usually they have much incentives to keep the existing base the way it is and cater to their customers. So this is also a type of innovation that the new market entrants usually win, and they may have a lower performance than the traditional players. However, they create services in a completely new way that never have been done before like that. So very interesting approach as well. How can you actually see that in a more visual way? Here we have a chart which shows the effects of low-end disruptive innovation. So above you have a big player which has been sustaining its product through innovation over and over again. However, you see the orange line which shows the amount of performance that the customers can actually utilize and absorb. And you can definitely see a performance surplus. So the company, the established company, creates and creates and creates, but actually the majority of users don't really benefit from it, and only maybe 1% of them do. So this is the typical flaw, a typical fallacy for incumbent players. And below, you see the low-end disruptors coming in, which basically try to target the same customers in the same market. However, they do so in a very different way. They cater to the lower end of the market and maybe provide less features and less services. However, they cater to the low end in a new way, and they offer services in a different way, so in a more easy way, for example. And this is how, also by offering it cheaper, they have a chance of tackling a market share that, for example, the incumbent player is not even interested in because it's not profitable. This is a low-end innovation example. Now we come to the new market innovation example. So you have to imagine these circles as being the size of the market. And the idea behind new market disruption is that you come from an existing share, but you, by creating a new market disruption, you extend the size of the market over time and you create new markets. And by that, your market volume absolutely becomes larger. We have an example here. For example, it's the mainframe computer, which was developed a long time ago. And at that time, it was extremely expensive and the market size was very small because only a few big companies could afford even having one at all. And it was really out of reach for most. There has been this new market disruption in this space, which was the mini computer, and it was a bit more affordable, so the market size grew because you could target more customers that could actually afford it. So you could see from the huge computer to the mini computer, the market extended because the prices fell, and as such the availability and accessibility for overall market participants was increased. Then the personal computer came, which also enabled not just many companies to employ computers or many more, but also individuals at home. So as you can see, the market size grew again. And as such, with the same mechanism, you can see this happening again with the laptop computer, making it more mobile, so enabling people to work from everywhere, and eventually from the handheld device, bringing it to each kind of end consumer. And so on, this journey continues. So through new market disruptions and hardcore innovation, you can actually disrupt the market and extend it and make it more accessible and affordable to much larger group of users who had before never been able to access these products. So what do we learn from this? If you look at it from further away, you could say that when there are disruptive innovations incoming, the incumbents usually flee and leave the space to the new entrants because they say, the performance is less significant, it's much lower quality, and we're not interested in the segment of the market anyway. However, if you talk about sustaining innovations, the incumbents usually fight the new entrants because they have this dominant market power and can build on that and have their current customer groups. This you can see happening in an example of an industry. So the traditional department stores started to innovate, however, only sustainably. So over time, you could really see a decline in the market and in the profitability of that market. And at the same time, there were a disruptive force of discounted department stores, which before nobody believed could ever be successful. But as we can see nowadays, they have become very successful and they have completely disrupted the traditional department stores. Another thing that has survived is the very high end of the market, but in between, most of the department stores are suffering very badly. So yeah, let's become even more practical and look at some examples of disruption. The lower one, most of you won't know because it's a German example, but I thought talking about the German economy, it would be very relevant to also show one of that. We have 3 companies on the left side, and the question is, what do they all have in common? Well, they were all incumbents who didn't believe they could ever be disrupted. What happened? Well, other companies came along that disrupted them quite effectively, and none of the companies on the left are really relevant, if even existent nowadays. So you can see, even as a huge player, it can go very quickly until disruptive by small and eventually very huge players again. So what does that mean? And what other topics and insights can we have from the area of disruption? Well, looking into today's economy, and that is relevant before we come to the legal disruptive innovations, what are the new players? Well, what do these 4 companies have in common? I would say they are all platforms. They're different kind of platforms, but it's very interesting the way they all operate. For example, Uber is the world's largest taxi company, but does not own any vehicle. Facebook is the world's most popular media owner and does not create any content, such as Alibaba, which is the most valuable retailer, but does not own any inventory, and Airbnb, the world's largest accommodation provider, owns no real estate. So a very fascinating new business model that all of these 4 platforms have created. And it's very exciting to see how the fundamentals of business and leveraging platforms and network effects have become a virtue in this space. So let's think about the legal industry again. Which areas could be disrupted in the legal industry? Well, in my opinion, all of them. However, it's a question of how quickly and by which means. And in the German legal industry, as we mentioned, we have a big barrier to disruption due to the regulation. However, this has been slowly easing up, and this speed of easing will definitely affect which areas will be disrupted first. We have an example. Let's look at an example for disruption in legal tech, looking at traditional law firms. Well, what could that be? If we look into what we just learned, maybe a disruption into legal tech and law firms would be a so-called virtual law firm. And that sounds crazy for some, but actually this has been happening already. So we have an example of the virtual law firm called LECARE. They are based in the UK. And we have a global network of lawyers on demand, which is LOD. And even though for many lawyers, especially in Germany, it's impossible to imagine this is a solution, it's actually a disruptive solution, a disruptive innovation as a platform where the traditional concept of legal law firms has been completely rethought in a new way. And so it's not just a sustaining innovation, but it's actually a low-end innovation and a new market innovation, because they're able to offer services at a more affordable prices, maybe also not billing by the hour, but in packages. And they create new markets because through this, they can also address new types of customers. So very interesting things happening in that sphere. But looking into the German space, we've also not been sleeping in the last years, but we've actually been working a lot on disruptive topics. As one example, we have been publishing a book called Liquid Legal Towards a Common Legal Platform, together with the Liquid Legal Institute, of which we are also a member, and we're in the supervisory board. And actually, this book was just launched in September, so it's very new. And what we've been trying to describe in the book is not just an idea, but it's something we want to put into practice. And it's about creating a common legal platform for the legal industry as a whole. So not just Germany, but overall, globally, we want to break down the silos, include the entire legal ecosystem, as you can see on the right. And we have 4 areas that we want to focus on. It's the area of digitization, of standardization, access to justice, and legal design. And how do we want to combine all of these things, and how do we want to actually make it happen? Well, that is the idea of the common legal platform that we have been describing in the book, where several renowned authors and practitioners of the legal industry and the legal technology industry have been contributing to share their vision of how such a platform could look like. Here's just a quick overview, what it should be. In our opinion, it for sure should be open and neutral, but especially an interdisciplinary platforms that all stakeholders can come together and collaborate. It's meant for cooperation, interaction, and exchange in the legal domain. And especially, as I just mentioned, it's meant to leverage the standardization and simplification of legal context, harmonize legal processes, especially across borders, facilitate legal transaction, and overall decrease the complexity of legal tasks that we know are happening in the day-to-day work. But especially, it would be very great to create data assets that could be commonly accepted across the industry, and the ability to share knowledge across the industry, because there is a lot of redundancy which could be standardized, and you know, where the redundancy could be eliminated. Let me quickly, yeah. Finally, to round it up, the common legal platform should be a decentralized network, and as we said, it should be independent, but it should be based on common rules and values, and on a governance that safeguards the compliance with the principles for the common legal platform. We want everyone to participate in its creation and in its workings, but there are a few standards I think everyone has to agree on, so that we ensure it stays neutral, and everyone can benefit it from the same way. So what is the approach? Well, we also say it should be technologically neutral and without the regard of particular interest groups, but rather taking into account the interests of the general public, and especially to improve the access to justice through the different types of activities. So the common legal platform that has been initiated by the Liquid Legal Institute is, in my view, one of the most practical cases of disruptive innovation in the legal space. It is a platform, it tries to encounter all different stakeholders, and it tries to rethink the legal solutions and legal service providers and the provision of legal services, so anything at all, in a completely new way. It's not supposed to exclude any area, but rather to really dig deep into each area, include all the different stakeholders, and create either low-end innovations that disrupt current things, or create new markets as well. So for me, the common legal platform of the Liquid Legal Institute really encompasses all the different attributes that a disruptive legal innovation needs. It is still very much at the beginning, and we hope any of you who's interested in contributing will do so. We're happy to invite anyone who likes to contribute and collaborate with us on these solutions. And it's open, it's neutral, nobody has a particular stake in it. So it's just the hope that we can break down the silos in this industry and truly disrupt it, and as such, obviously accelerate the overall digital transformation in our wonderful industry. And that's already all I would like to share with you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or email. I'm happy to share more details on either of these topics. And I'm very glad to have been talking to you today. Yes, thank you very much, and hopefully see you soon in person. Thank you.